Chapter 10. Sir Randolph's News. Our Surrey adventure began to seem like a dream, for the activity associated with it came to such an abrupt end. I grew accustomed to Holmes's presence in our quarters, a rarity when a major case dominated his working calendar. Then one morning I rose somewhat early and found that he was gone. But he rejoined me as breakfast was being served, even disposing of a rasher of bacon with eggs, and some of Mrs. Hudson's toothsome scones. His manner seemed grave, but I did not note the nervous restlessness that indicated that he was at loose ends as regards an idea. Actually, he seemed resigned. I waited him out, and finally he chose to tidy up and package the recent days of seeming inaction. We have reached an impasse, Watson, one that a crash course in Egyptology has not bridged, nor have events as reported from our sources provided a clue. At the end of a tether as regards my own resources, I am forced to go elsewhere, and as a first move I visited the Diogenes Club this morning. Recall that Mycroft came to us at our request, so I returned the courtesy, and found your brother similarly bemused. This was but a shot in the dark. Let us say that his concern has grown, not lessened. There have been a series of meetings, first in Afghanistan, then Babylonia, Syria, Palestine, Persia, and Arabia, these being religious gatherings. Mycroft's information is very sketchy. One meeting in the Grand Mosque in Damascus was extremely well attended and a lengthy affair. The main point is that a spirit of unrest is spreading in the East and heading, like the Sacred Sword, towards Egypt. Islam blended 100 scattered races into one, but the religion is split into many sects, more than 72 to be exact. If some revelation, some apparent miracle were to unite the followers of the Crescent, you can anticipate the possible results. In a sudden flash of understanding, I spoke automatically. The second coming of Prophet. Holmes's nod of agreement was grim. As another move towards assistance, I have secured an appointment with Sir Randolph Rapp. Are you free to accompany me this morning? I accepted this invitation with alacrity. The unusual household of said gentleman was extremely interesting to me, as was the man himself. His theories rather paralleled Holmes's thinking on certain matters, and his influence, though indirect and unsuspected, was enormous. But as I prepared for our journey to Mayfair, another matter was brought to our attention. Wiggins, titular head of the Baker Street Irregulars, that motley group of juvenile street urchins that Holmes had recruited as his eyes and ears in the streets, came calling. The young rapscallion brought no news of his own, but was the bearer of a message. The thin man sent this for you, Mr. Holmes. Mr. Holmes took a handwritten note from Wiggins's grimy paw, and after reading it, dismissed his ally with thanks and a shilling. "Slim's on the job, Watson," he murmured thoughtfully. It would seem that Chu San Fu and his entourage will depart by private yacht for Venice within 24 hours. What sense does that make? None, unless my memory has played me false. Holmes was beside the bookcase, extracting a copy of Lloyd's Shipping Guide, which he rifled open. I was right. The Hisauri Camus does not touch at Venice or any other Italian port. The sword is en route to Egypt and the Chinaman to Italy. Has a new element been introduced into this overly complex matter? Would that I could answer you, old fellow. Come, let us make for Mayfair. Having kept Chu and Fu in my sights till now, I don't intend to lose that advantage, so we may have a trip in store. The Rapp estate in Mayfair seemed unchanged. Portions of the rambling house were visible through the trees, and the surrounding iron spike fence provided an impressive barrier broken only by the driveway gate, presided over by an occupied gatehouse. Being familiar with this unusual domicile, Holmes and I dismissed our hansom at the entrance and made ourselves known to the large, truculent-looking man, who did not unlock the outer portal until we were identified. It it clanged shut as soon as we walked through and began making our way towards the house. Clumps of trees were effectively positioned to shield the residents from the street, but nothing grew near to the establishment save close-cut lawns. The area was devoid of cover as the top of a billiard table. There was a chorus of low growls in the distance, and I knew the Doberman pinschers were nervously pacing their kennels. When the establishment was darkened for the night, the dogs would be let loose to roam between fence and house, and to walk then, as we are now, without the presence of a known member of the household would be akin to suicide. Randolph Rapp was important to the Empire, and considerable pains were taken to assure his safety and privacy. When the butler, whose contours were those of a regimental blacksmith, ushered us within, Holmes and I were again observers of a picture of tasteful English home life. Costly Oriental rugs chose at intervals to modestly reveal highly polished floorboards before resuming their figured designs. The pristine white glove of an admiral of the fleet could have been run over any piece of furniture in the brightly lit drawing-room without surfacing a dust mote or dirt particle. The logs in the fireplace and those in the attendant wood basket were in uniform size and cut, and I felt they would not dare allow a secretion of sap to flare or pop. Paintings were hung in precisely the right places as though positioned to the centimetre. Two large oils bore the imprint of John Everett Millais, and surely that was a Bellini over the great couch. If the drawing-room and entrance reflected the meticulous taste of the proper Amanda Rapp, Sir Randolph's study, to which we were led, had to be his sanctum sanctorum, and an untidy one at that. As the butler retreated, the former professor, now motivational specialist, rose from behind his large desk, which was festooned with notes, letters, and reports in a helter-skelter manner. His ruddy face, rounded and smiling, emerged from an oversized head crowned by a shock of unruly hair. He was short, and his balloon-like body bounced as he came towards us, from his work area, on bandy legs. "Ah, Holmes," he said, extending his hand. "Always delighted. Do sit down," indicating a leather couch, worn in spots, a short distance from his overflowing desk. He seized my hand in both of his. His short, spatulate fingers, like those of a pianist, were strong. "And my good Watson, you both look fit." Leading me to a somewhat lumpy easy-chair, he indicated humidors containing cigars and tobacco were in evidence round the room. There was a jade case on his desk from which he extracted a long Egyptian cigarette. The index finger of his right hand was marred by a nicotine stain which he suddenly seemed to notice, picking at it in an absent-minded fashion as he reseated himself. I lit up one of Rapp's rum-soaked cigars with appreciation as the professor shoved papers aside, merely increasing the confusion. He gestured towards it with a sigh. "Order is the virtue of the mediocre." Can't recall who said that, but the idea gives me comfort. He retrieved his cigarette, puffing on it. "But what has been happening in your active lives? You fellows get round a mite, whilst I am chained here." Holmes and I knew this wasn't true, and Rapp knew that we knew it. When it suited him, he wandered at will through government offices, and few indeed were the files not open to him. As like as not, after one of his forays into what he called the outside world, a series of reports would emanate from the very room we were sitting in, and find their way by official courier to departmental heads, frequently with a shake-up as the result. "Have you," questioned Holmes, "been privy to reports from the Middle East of late?" "Sent to me by your brother," was the reply, that accompanied an affirmative nod. "Bad show, that. Especially the gathering in the Grand Mosque of Damascus. Present were at least 7 of the leading Islamics. When factions begin to agree, watch out. Especially the followers of Mohammed, for the Bedouin has always loved violence." Preambles were wasted on one such as Randolph Rapp, and Holmes was delighted to dispense with them. If the diverse Islamic sects are untied by some miracle, the jihad, the holy war that they cry for, could result. Islam, la ilaha illallah, and top trap. It's the miracle I'm searching for. There is the sacred sword. I must have given a start of surprise, and Rapp favored me with a gentle smile. It was not long ago that I inquired of Holmes as to the disappearance of Captain Spaulding. Now, with a Mid-East outbreak threatening, I must assume that you have considered this word as a tool to stir the masses. My brother runs to the theory of an undiscovered tomb, and there is tangible evidence to back him. And also good thinking, replied Rapp crisply. I see where his mind is going. There was a pause, and I could not let this statement dangle. Well, I certainly don't. Consider, Watson, the matter of the Mahdi. Rapp's tone did me the courtesy of not sounding tolerant. The outbreak he instigated is of recent vintage. The Mahdi got away with the Prophet deception because of a resemblance, especially the construction of his teeth and the lisp. Even primitive minds bent on pillage and plunder will not respond to the same stimulus twice. Mycroft Holmes pictures a movement based on something more conclusive than a zealot waving a sword. "An ancient prophecy, perhaps?" said Sherlock Holmes. "The very word ancient leads us to Egypt." Rapp seemed intrigued. That cradle of civilization had a plethora of gods, but even among them there was a one god reformer, Ikhnaton, in the 14th century before Christ, banned all other deities in favor of Aton, the sun god. However, he was no Muhammad, and his monotheistic attempt failed. Upon his death, worship of the old gods returned, and the Egyptians attempted to eradicate that particular pharaoh from their history. I don't really know if his one god faith lived on a bit or not. You don't? I asked. Despite my many years with Holmes, there was always the element of surprise when he confessed to being baffled. In a similar vein, to hear Randolph Rapp in doubt about anything made my eyebrows jump. The professor was shaking his head. There are still so many things we do not know, especially about Egypt. But I thought the Rosetta Stone, I began. Oh, yes. One of Napoleon's soldiers discovers a black basalt tablet that provides the key to the deciphering of the hieroglyphics and the rediscovery of the culture of ancient Egypt. Quite amazing, but not completely satisfying. We have never been able to decipher the hieroglyphics of Crete, Watson, which may predate those of Egypt. Aztec and Mayan inscriptions remain a puzzle. In a similar manner, there are these so-called secret writings. Holmes was leaning forward on the couch. This is something new, he admitted. It is reasonably certain that they originally were in the pyramids, though possibly later tombs from which they were stolen, for they were inscribed on tablets of gold, but some have shown up through the centuries. As to their message, who knows? Rapp shrugged, and then another thought intruded. There is one chap, Howard Andrade, who I'm told has cracked the riddle. He based his study on the Cretan hieroglyphics, using them as a basis or key to the cuneiform symbols of the secret writings. Evidently he has succeeded. But, I said, if this Andrade fellow has deciphered an ancient form of writing, Wouldn't there be a bit of a stir? I'd think the journals would pounce on it. Dear me, no, protested Rapp. Things move a bit slower in the field of antiquity. Andrade is a brilliant chap. I'm inclined to believe he has pulled it off. But he will make no claims until he has absolute proof. Remember, every other Egyptologist will desperately try to prove him wrong simply because they haven't deciphered the secret writings themselves. A competitive field, ruled by pride, agreed Rapp. Andrade removed himself from the country to complete his research. Doesn't want his near triumph to leak out. Last I heard, he was living in Venice. I almost jumped out of my chair, and even Holmes had the good grace to register surprise. Venice, you say? I do, never expecting this reaction. Here we are discussing ancient religions and a potential holy war, then, of a sudden, you give every indication of going somewhere. "We are," said Holmes, "to Venice."